And thank you to ACYPL, who has been a major life-changing organization for my own life. So I appreciate the opportunity to not only just see the world, but to present about some of my passions, which is definitely equity in education.
ACYPL has meant quite a bit to me, and I'm really thankful to have had the opportunity now to kind of give back in exploring the issues of equity in education, specifically as it relates to COVID.
You can't just take one model for students. In other words, whatever you did in the classroom before on Monday, now we're just going to put it on a Zoom and now everyone's going to learn. That clearly doesn't work, right? So we also shouldn't be surprised that when students in traditional settings weren't all doing great either. Should we have had other ways of teaching from the very beginning to make sure that everyone had a fair shot?
I think one of the other struggles too is that not every piece of your curriculum is going to transfer to an online platform. So we like to, where the world is wanting to focus on career readiness, not just college readiness. And a lot of those hands-on courses that speak to those kids, and especially for us where we live in such an agricultural area and we live in a very blue-collar community where there's a lot of interest in the technical trades and in the arts and those types of things, that trying to learn how to translate that into an online platform is going to be very difficult, and something that we definitely struggled with during the COVID closure.
Our children rely on our school system for food, essentially breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner. So over the past few months, we've served over 6.4 million meals in ensuring that our kids and their families can have access to healthy food.
And the way that we fund public education through things like property taxes is one of the drivers of inequity. In Westland Wilsonville, we have an amazing reputation for passing our capital bonds and local option levies. We pass it every single time. That local option levy gives us 80 additional teachers in our schools. And that capital bond just gave us $206 million to spend on building new infrastructure, buying technology. My sister lives in rural Southern Oregon, and they're not covered. I mean, her school district is funded very differently. They have a very high need. Their community does not pass capital bonds and local option levies. They were not given devices. They were not given a hotspot. And so her kids in rural Southern Oregon are going to have a very different experience of distance learning.
I would encourage you to read the guidelines put forward by the State Department of Education and the governor's office to returning our children back into the school district. And it's so completely unrealistic. Things like having young children wearing masks all day. You can't get a 4-year-old or 5-year-old just not to touch the crayons on their desk, let alone not fidget with a mask for 8 hours in the school day. That's just not realistic. And I think so I bring up that to say that if we had more diverse perspectives, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's occupation, if we had more educators making policy, would we get the results that we have today?
We've spent so much time talking about safety of students, we've kind of lost sight of, well, what about the education of the students? We've become so focused on sanitation and masks and space that we've kind of forgot about the primary role, which is education.
From a pedagogical standpoint, were we prepared to support our educators? Were our educators prepared to be able to go to a pure digital format? Sadly, the answer is we weren't prepared. And I'm not quite sure that we would have ever been prepared, because this is a once in a lifetime pandemic. The last time we saw something the scales of this would have been 1918.
You have to be willing as a taxpayer or as a parent or as a community member to voice exactly what you want your school and your community to be about and what you want them to teach your children. And so that's something that we can all do as an individual and as people who are looking towards the future.